Social penetration theory is a founding theory of interpersonal communication and was developed by Erwin Altman and Thomas Taylor. Social penetration theory is rather complex and has been used frequently in research. Like any theory, it has both its strengths and weaknesses and has major and minor components. After exploring these major and minor components and how it has been used in research, we looked into the strengths and weaknesses. And then from there, we made 5 practical recommendations on how this theory can be used for improving real-life communication. So to begin with major and minor components. This theory can be explained using the onion metaphor. Similar to an onion, self-disclosure is said to happen as we pull back the layers to get to deeper, more withheld, intimate information. We start with the first layer, which is surface level and represents things such as taste, like what we like and don't like. Discussing these surface level things help us to get to know people at a shallow level. Social penetration theory notes that we end up holding back a lot of this information and stick to the outside of the onion, or surface level with most interaction. However, as time goes on, you may decide to disclose things like life matters, including family, friends, and political stance. After discussing these life matters, someone gets to know you a little bit better than just at the surface level, and you can start to reveal some information about morals, values, and beliefs that further reveal more about you as a person. Diving deeper into the onion and self-disclosure can leave us feeling vulnerable, and therefore we only put ourselves in this situation when it's seen as beneficial to us. Disclosing more intimate information can be considered risky because it is more meaningful and not as readily disclosed. Therefore, we find ourselves holding back a lot of information because we are scared of the risks. Social penetration theory makes a couple different assumptions. The first assumption is that intimacy is closeness that occurs through both breadth and depth of disclosure. With that being said, intimacy cannot be achieved by just talking about a lot of different topics at a surface level with someone. You must dive deeply into each of these topics to achieve levels of intimacy. The second assumption concerns social exchange, claiming that the decision to disclose information with someone is based on a cost-benefit analysis of relational outcomes using comparison levels. Comparison levels are used as a basis of cost-benefit analysis in which you compare your expectations for a person in a given role to the actual outcome. These given roles can be things such as a boyfriend, girlfriend, coworker, or best friend. We also use another comparison level called the comparison of alternative. This comparison level is used for your expectation for anyone in any given role.
Social penetration theory has been appealing to researchers ever since it was originally developed. Researchers have integrated the simplicity of social penetration thinking into their scholarship. For instance, the effects of self-disclosure on various types of relationships has been studied and written about across a variety of populations, including families studied by Golish, Turner, and West in 2002, teachers studied by Russ, Simmons, and Hunt also in 2002, marriages studied by Dixon and Walker in 2001, and physician-patient relationships studied by Agnew, Thompson, and Cusella in the early part of 2000. All of these topics have been studied in a variety of different ways. Therefore, the theory is extremely interrogative because it has created literally hundreds of studies on self-disclosure and relationship development. However, interpersonal communication scholars are not without their doubts about the social penetration theory. Specifically, some writers contend that self-disclosure in particular may be too narrowly interpreted within the theory. They believe that self-disclosure depends on a number of factors, not just the need to reveal to people over time because people are constantly changing. Further, they indicate that self-disclosure is not always a linear relationship event because, like I said, people are constantly changing. There are other groups of scholars that have weighed in on the relational development as well. This group completely rejects the notion that relationship development is linear. Mark Knapp and Anita Evangelisti, for example, believe that, and I quote, relationships are nested within a network of other social relationships, which affect communication patterns manifested by the partners, meaning that other people have the ability to influence the direction of a relationship, not just one specific individual. Finally, some scholars find that the model's emphasis on self-disclosure may be misguided and inappropriate. They conclude that once relationships are established, self-disclosure does not necessarily continue to play a pivotal role to the degree that it once did early on in the relationship. Therefore, the theory, according to how the developers conceptualize it, is somewhat limited by its linearity and emphasis on self-disclosure.
The social penetration theory has some strengths and some weaknesses. The one strength that we could really find in this theory is that it describes the progression of the relationship. So this process of a relationship is modeled, and so we see how this helps us understand the progression of interpersonal relationships. There were a lot more weaknesses than there were strengths, and so the first weakness that we found was this theory really relies on self-disclosure. This model relies on the person self-disclosing parts of their personality. Without this, the relationship does not have the ability to grow. The second weakness that we found was that it can be affected by the costs and benefits. And so rewards can either be small or large, but either way, they have the ability to affect a relationship in both positive and negative ways. Costs have a negative impact on the relationship, and this causes the relationship to stop peeling back layers and getting to know a person, and this allows the relationship to be able to be put on hold. The last weakness that we found was honesty is the best policy, and the hardest thing for this is that we don't know when a person is being honest or not. We can always try to infer when we think they are being, but how do you know if someone is telling you the truth? And honesty plays a huge part in relationships, and it also plays a huge part in the growth of relationships. When people aren't telling the truth, this leads to less self-disclosure in the end, which can lead to a lot more harm in the relationship.
So the fourth and final section of our video is the practical recommendations for improving real-life communication. I came up with both inside and out recommendations for inside and outside of the college atmosphere. The first idea is for companies to use social penetration theory to create a more dynamic interpersonal space by having their employees be out and engage customers on a one-to-one basis. This could help build stronger public relation between consumers and companies by building a higher product trust. The second idea was to use the internet, including social media and computer-mediated communication, to help break down social barriers and personal awkwardness faster and on a deeper level through interpersonal engagement. Third idea was to use modern techniques that companies are using to open up spaces inside companies, very much like removing offices between employees. And this would help break down territorially and improve social penetration between those companies. So this would create a higher level, I'm sorry, we start that one over, I totally flipped that one. The third is a modern technique that companies are using to remove office spaces and to break down territorially between coworkers and improve social penetration. So this would create a higher level of removing private space and increase interpersonal engagement as well. The fourth idea is to initiate a meeting room program for all first-year students online. Helping the roommates exchange information prior to meeting face-to-face can peel back some layers and help the semester run smoother by removing those layers and increase their interpersonal relationship prior to them coming to school. And my last idea was to create an online anonymous chat program for the university that could help to remove social stigmas for the first time meeting of people and possibly extend the olive branch for new friendships and more on the university campus.